Welcome to the first in-season episode of the Huddle House. Want to apologize to the league just for our inactivity, but we're back. We're back. We're ready to rock. Hopefully this season a little bit. We took a couple weeks off, just to kind of get life together. But who better to have on our first episode than the commissioner, Mister Huddle Buddies Weekly himself? Thankfully, keeping the content machine flowing without us, Mr. James Clark. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm always happy to be on, guys. Y'all got this thing started. I just try to add something to it and keep it going with the weekly. Hope it's just a little bit of content to feed everybody their weekly news in our league and performances, good and bad.
The weekly is great, bro. And I honestly feel like you are as busy as Roger Goodell is on a day to day. Maybe busy, bro, honestly.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I don't know what your evening looked like tonight, but I've heard snippets. So like you got a call to join us, like as you're pulling up to the house, you had to put two kids down and the baby, and somewhere in between there, you found the time to text me about a trade. Like I don't know how you make all this work, but you really
It's called multitasking. I know I'm one of the elder statesmen of the league, and I think Chris is like the only other one with a kid. But like I have the multiples. Once you have more than one kid, you kind of have to figure how to maneuver everything. Like I know one of the funniest things was like back when how our waivers run at like 3 a.m. My biggest advantage whenever we initially had that start was like when I had one of the kids as like a baby, they wake up one time middle of the night, usually somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m. So if it was somewhere towards 4 a.m., I'd be the only one awake when stuff would go. I'd be like, all right, cool, I get my first pick of anybody that's left. So now it's just you pick and choose what's going on. So we had football practice going on, load everybody back in the car on the way home. Matt hits me the text, and I was like, I got to make it happen. I was like, all right, kids, shower time into bed. Let's go. Huddle
Hey,
house has to
I think
happen.
you might need to give the trophy and let your wife hold on to it for a few weeks. This is a thank you present for her letting you hop on at such a short notice. She's kind of a legend.
She's working, so that even worked out easier. That made the scheduling easier. As long as the kids were in bed, there was nothing else to compete with.
I gotcha. I gotcha. All right, well, let's get this thing going. What we want to do, just kind of a short and sweet episode as much as we can. We are filming this relatively late, but we're going to do a little surprises and disappointments episode. Obviously, there's been a lot of both of those from each roster has at least one player usually that's kind of overperformed expectations and one that is underperforming, kind of been disappointing. So we're just going to kind of hit on that at each team, try to shoot at a rapid fire clip as much as we can. But we figure we start at the top, kind of work our way down. So who wants to kind of kick us off with Marcus? He's been off to a freaking red hot start this year.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
He really has been 6-0 atop the leaderboard. I'll start out. I'll just offer up a surprise. I mean, like you said, Matt, I think there's multiple candidates on this roster, but I'm going to go with Chris Godwin. I mean, you're looking at a guy who after 3 weeks is I think, number 3 receiver. Yeah, he's the number 3 receiver overall. Like, he's just been incredibly reliable and, just target share. He gets a decent amount every game. He's scoring touchdowns. The Bucks offense and Baker look really capable. So I think that, maybe not as many touchdowns every week, but like the production should continue. So I think that's a nice little, and I know that Marcus has been hurting for receiver depth. So to have a steady producer like that, it goes a long way.
Yeah, I agree with it. Like I would like to offer up Brian Robinson, even though he hasn't been as flashy as Godwin, just because Marcus has kind of been trying to fill in those flexes. I feel like over time, and the trade for Godwin helped in doing that. But I think Robinson, whether it's on touchdowns or touches alone, I think there was a little bit of worry, even though we kind of thought Eckler was past his prime, that with him coming to Washington, he might have a little more of a role than even Gibson did when he was there. And he's just kind of consistently putting up double digits in his flex for him so that it's almost like a safety net. If someone doesn't perform, he still has at least 10 points or so coming from that spot. So I think that's kind of one of those saving grace things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Robinson's been good. I mean, Marcus has gotten really good running back production this year, which outside of Brees, I don't think he knew how much he really would have. But I have to say the painful one. I mean, I don't know. It's not really the end of the world because, like I said, I wasn't trying to be good anyway, and this guy might have helped me win some weeks. But I gave up J.K. Dobbins for $7 fab, and I kept Gus Edwards. I was thinking this man's torn both Achilles. I mean, it would be a medical miracle for him to even play another relevant snap in the league. Like, I don't know what the Chargers are filling out a Make-A-Wish campaign just to keep him on the roster as a nice little sympathy. I'm thinking he's cooked. I just need to clear out the roster after all these rookies I drafted. I don't have the roster space. I was literally about to cut the man, so I'm like, at least Marcus can give me some fab. Then he comes out and he's RB15. He's put up, 2 out of 3 20 bombs, and I'm just like, of course, of course. And then Quentin Johnston, we'll probably hit on him later. The other Charger decides to wake up from his coma. I'm just like, and I kept Josh Palmer, so I'm just like, that whole team right now. I mean, I
You kept the older guys on the rebuilding team.
Well, I mean, because the older guys at least showed some level of talent. I mean, JK has more talent than Gus, but I'm just saying, like with the 2 torn Achilles, I thought I might have been able to run a faster.
Right. Hey, I will say for Marcus's team though, honorable mention for this spot was under the radar kind of addition to just tossing Sam Darnold on the team on the bench. He hasn't made any difference because he hasn't played, but 31 points on the bench for a guy that we were like, this guy's been done in the league for about 2-3 years now. And now it looks like if he really needed to, even though Josh Allen's dominant, say Josh Allen was on his bye week or got nicked up for a game or something, Darnold's someone you could plug and play and not be real concerned as long as he's in that KOC offense.
Yeah, Darnold's been fantastic. But let's get to disappointments really quick. I think we'll spend less time on disappointments. We're trying to spread the era of positivity. I know a lot of guys are down in the dumps, so let's just be quicker with the disappointments. There's not too many on his team. I mean, all of his starters have performed. If I had to say one, I've got to obviously go down to the bench. I think I would just say the whole situation surrounding Jahan Dotson. He had such obviously a good rookie year. Last year, he really dipped, became someone that wasn't really playable. I know Marcus was just trying to figure out, okay, is he going to have a bounce back year 3, get over that sophomore slump? And then not only does he get traded, but he gets traded to a team where he doesn't really have a major role at all, and it's no longer really someone you can be confident in ever really playing. So not a major disappointment because obviously he's recovered well, but I definitely think that had to stung since it's a former first-round pick that no longer seems like he's really viable.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go quick. I think the obvious one to me is Raheem Mostert. I mean, that was the guy who finished the year as top 5 running back last year, and now he's the thing with him has always been injuries, and he avoided that for a whole year, and you saw the ceiling. But he's already banged up this year, and without having Tua, like it almost feels like his viability is kind of ran out, or the runway is a lot shorter now, just knowing he's already been nicked up and Tua's out for a while. So I'd say him.
Yeah, I was going to say Mostert as well, just because even though thanks to Dobbins and Singletary and Robinson and those guys being consistent, it doesn't hurt him as much. Mostert was a guy that had that upside, and then even watching week 1 before he got hurt in that game I was watching, him and Achane out there, it's just a whole different level of speed, which you'd expect from a younger guy. And it makes, especially with the way the season's going right now, if and when Tua comes back, it's like at what point, even if Mostert's healthy, is it worth even having him out there as the old guy when you can kind of work on Achane, maybe get Jalen Wright a little more involved? It just doesn't seem like there's any possibility for him to really contribute on this team going forward.
Yeah,
for sure. Let's move on to Mr. Commish. Let's talk about your team. I guess I'll kick it off with surprises. I mean, there's a few. I think the one I'm going to go with, though, is probably James Cook. I know there's probably better options. I'll leave those to you guys. But for me, James Cook's a good option because, you got him for what I at least consider a pretty reasonable price. Most of us were pretty upset that the rich got richer there. But I don't think anyone expected him to necessarily be this good. I know he showed flashes last year of being a top 5 type guy, had a few top 5 weeks, but he wasn't super consistent. He hit that hot streak for a 3 or 4 game stretch and then kind of dipped as the season waned. But for him to start as the RB5 this year through 3 weeks and just be an absolute touchdown machine, I don't think you could really ask much more of him. And we'll see if it continues, but that offense is definitely just churning.
Yeah, I got to say the one for me is just Jordan Mason. I mean, obviously, if you would have thought that if you'd have said you lose Christian McCaffrey, you might have thought the path to getting 6-0 would be harder, but you had the foresight to scoop him up, and who would have known he'd have stepped right in and been, the bell cow there. We know a lot of people run well in those offenses, but still, he's not a name, but he's been, RB12 on the year. So I think that was a pretty good surprise for me.
Yeah, I'd say it's those two guys honestly together. I don't count Juwan Jennings one big week to count, even though it was just like throw him in the lineup and he puts up that and it made a big difference this week. But like overall for the season, I'd say those two backs just because Cook was someone I bought into the whole second half of the year when they changed their offensive philosophy. I was like, if they could keep that up, he could at least rise in his value. I don't know. I didn't exactly expect it to be what it's been so far, but I thought he could be a top 15 guy to help me out. And then Mason is a guy that I carried on the practice squad. And then this year was coming into a year where he can't be on the practice squad anymore. I'm like, well, I'm going to have to let him go after the draft, which I did. And then I was starting to see reports on training camp where they're like, oh, Mason is starting to run like as the backup. Him and Mitchell are kind of splitting it. Elijah Mitchell, who Jeremy and I have been back and forth where I've had many conversations to try to get him to have that security. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll just, before the year starts, just throw Mason on the bench just in case something crazy is going on, especially once I saw the stuff with McCaffrey's calf come up. I was like, let's just take a shot on this. I was like, worst case, maybe he's playing a few snaps and something with Mitchell happens, which Mitchell ended up going out and Mason's the dude. So he ended up working out.
And fruitful.
For sure. I mean, you've had a lot of things go right, which is good so far. Getting to disappointments, like I said, nothing too crazy. Most guys have delivered, but I think I'm gonna go with a little bit of a cheat, and I gotta knock the 6-0 guy off his pedestal a little bit and say probably just your Jags. To be honest, like the two Jags you have. Kirk looked all right this week and got double digits, but week 1, 3.5, week 2, 0.4. I mean, that was a guy you used to put in your flex just about every week, pretty reliable. Now he just doesn't seem as trustworthy. And then ETN, I know he's still considered an RB2 right now, RB22 overall, but I think last year for most of the year he was like a pretty clear-cut RB1, like top 10, top 12 guy. So I think his productivity's waned a little bit this year. Like still very solid starter, but I think probably compared to last year, it seems like he's kind of fallen off a little bit. So nothing major. I mean, obviously, if your weak spot is RB22, you're having a good year. But I gotta go with something. So I'm gonna say the Jags.
Yeah, mine's gonna be a guy that I was pretty high on in like redraft leagues this year and was trying to get a lot of just because I thought he was gonna be just a target machine. And that's Cortland Sutton. And he kind of has been. He's getting a lot of targets. It's just like not translating to anything because Bo Nix and their offense not
a lot of nice 5-yard targets.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought like he would at least be just a vacuum for targets, which he has been. I thought it would result in more fantasy production. So I'm kind of getting burned in that in some redraft leagues. So I would just say him because I thought he could be a wide receiver 2 type guy this year.
Well, see, and that was part of my thought process when I swapped out like Judy and dropped from the first to the second. It was like I get I'm getting the older guy, but he's the top guy on his offense of a rookie. I was like, if he's going to look at anybody, he should be looking at the only established receiver on the team. So he hasn't quite been what I expected. I would agree partially with Matt, though. I think my biggest disappointment has been Christian Kirk this year. And I honestly, besides a couple drops in week 1, I don't think it's to any fault of his own. I think it's just the shitstorm of offensive play calling that we've had this year from, hey, it's you guys' head coach's brother, who I can't stand, plus Doug Peterson at this point. Yeah. They're trying to do too much of whatever they want offensively and putting a lot of different options out there and trying to hit a mix of Gabe Davis here, running backs here, and not going to like I get what you're trying to do is kind of make it where you have to guard more than one option. But the past 2 years when we had success, it was Evan Ingram, it was Christian Kirk finding spots open and feeding them 8 to 10 targets a game each, and then kind of hitting the other guys complementary to them. And then it feels like more we get away from that, the more it hurts my personal fantasy team and my personal team.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll move on. Let's move on to Caleb. Ty, kick us off on that one.
Sure, man. I mean, I think if we're talking surprises, I would probably say that the name that sticks out to me from this team is Rashee Rice, and the amount of targets he's been getting in that offense. He's looked like a beast. And, you know, there was a lot of controversy and kind of cloud around him this offseason about all the stuff off the field and what he was going to be on the field. And he's really just he's been great these first 3 weeks. So I would call him the surprise.
James, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I'd say for surprise, I agree. Rice, I feel like Rice was like once you could tell he wasn't going to be suspended in time for this season, his stock was starting to rise, but not quite as much as it probably should have. And once we've watched these couple of games and seen Kelsey's been non-existent out there just running around, and he's really got eyes only for Rice, that's been a big deal. The other guy, I'd say, like, obviously expectations were super high considering where he was going in rookie drafts, but the way Neighbors has kind of stepped up with an abysmal offense and still been able to put up the points he's been putting up. Granted, a lot of it on touchdowns, but he's getting the targets to make it happen. And if he can consistently put this up with a bad offense, it's just going to keep getting better once they actually have a quarterback and something to do there.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, you guys hit the nail on the head. I don't really have anything else to say. I think Neighbors has been better than advertised. I think Marvin has been as advertised. I think we knew Neighbors was really good. He was also a top 10 pick. It's not like anybody was sleeping on him thinking he was bad, but I just think that the amount of good that he's been, I think, has been greater than expectation. I don't think anyone expected in his first 3 games he'd have 2 games where he had like 19 and 15 targets or whatever, and just be vacuuming them in. So he's been insane. I think Marvin's been great too, but Neighbors almost looks like he's got a better floor than even Marvin does. So definitely seems like super easy, immediate start, no question. Looking at his entire team, there's not really too many guys I'd say have been disappointments. Everybody's delivered. I mean, if I'm grasping at straws, maybe Jacoby Myers. I mean, he put up 18 this week, but week 1 and 2 he only had 8 and 5. But I don't think he was really expecting that much from Jacoby. But
I think the only guy that expectations were high, at least for myself, was Trey McBride, and I get he got a touchdown by falling on one in week 2, but I have him in a different league, and it hasn't been quite what I expected. I thought, I mean, coming in, he was clear top 5 tight end, kind of whether it was dynasty or redraft, and he just hasn't, he's gotten some targets and stuff. He's just not really doing a lot with it and not getting really red zone targeted as much as I thought they would with a better offense this year.
Yeah.
It's the Dallas Cowboys defense. That's the disappointment.
That's a good one.
They scored so many touchdowns last year, and they got dog walked the last 3 weeks. -2. Yeah. There's your disappointment for his team.
That's a good one. Let's move on to Carter. I guess I'll kick it off with him. There's a lot of things that have gone right for Carter's team. I mean, he's got a lot of things going for him right now. If I had to say a biggest surprise, I mean, I have to go with Quentin Johnston. I know he's not even played him yet, so it hasn't really affected his team, like in terms of him winning, because it's been on his bench. But I mean, that man was straight up garbage last season, and now he has 3 touchdowns in 3 weeks. I'm just like, screw you, dude. I'll hold a grudge to him for the rest of my life if he keeps playing like this. He needs to go back to being the scrub he's always been. He has no right to improve the moment he leaves my team. He needs to Kenny Galladay it and just reverse that crap and go back to being terrible. I do not want to see Quentin Johnston catch another touchdown the rest of his career. I need to feel justified. So screw him.
This is clearly unbiased, guys. Clearly unbiased.
I mean, I don't even know if this is qualifies as a surprise that much, but I mean, Saquon, the amazing start he's had to the year, I don't everybody expected him to be good. He's just been out this world good. So I mean, I think when you look at this team, the reason he's in the position he is because of Saquon and those amazing weeks. Far and away been the top running back this year. So that's
I agree. I think this was everybody's ceiling of what they were the dream for Saquon is getting behind this line and putting up dream numbers like this. Everybody's it'll probably be a notch below that because Hurts runs and all that. Yeah. So I think it has exceeded. It's been above, right at the ceiling of what people thought was a dream start. I'd say up until this week, my biggest surprise on his team was honestly, even though it hasn't been crazy, was Tony Pollard. He really disappointed this week. But before that, everybody coming into this, I don't know about you guys, but I thought it was 50-50 split down the middle between him and Spears after how Spears played with Derrick Henry last year, one of their best running backs in team history. And they were oh, we're going to get Spears out there for at least half the snaps and give him all the passing downs. And meanwhile, Pollard, up until this week, Pollard was getting what felt like a majority of the work, at least when it came to running the ball and getting the high points opportunities with those runs in the red zone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Disappointment
he's been solid.
wise, I mean,
There's a few.
I feel like Waddle's easy, but it's not really on him. What I would say is would be Amari Cooper, just because he hasn't been up until this week. Again, he popped this week, which was huge. Although he was on Carter's bench, it looks like, or unless that's where he just
Yeah,
moved
he was.
now. But
I think he was on his bench. I'm pretty
I think so
sure.
too. But yeah, like he was struggling to even get targets, and then when you'd see the replays, the one or two targets he'd get wide open down the field for a touchdown, he just alligator arms it and misses completely. And it's like there's no way he lost a step like that. And I know Watson's been bad, but my God, I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
you'd expect him to at least put up decent numbers with those targets.
Well, and the crazy thing is, since we're only 3 weeks into the season, if you have one like massive boom week, it'll make you like a top 15, 20 wide receiver because we're only 3 weeks in. Like, I mean, look at Jawan Jennings. Like, he went from like wide
Top.
receiver like 80 to like top 20 just through one game. Amari just put up 24.1, which is obviously a major boom week, and he's still wide receiver 33 because in his
Well,
first 2 weeks he put up 2.6 and 2.6. So,
Juwan
I mean,
Jennings is wide receiver 2 on the season. He's worth at least two first. I know what he's
yeah,
worth.
well, for sure. So it's just that just shows how bad Amari was the other 2 weeks. So that's a good one.
Yeah, I'd say the one that really jumps out to me, and this is another guy that I was all over in redraft this year. Matt, if it's any consolation to you about losing Quentin Johnson, you can feel great that you got rid of this guy. That's Curtis Samuel. I was like, he's the Bills' number one. Like, this is his time, and that man is running as like the fourth or fifth receiver on that team right now. He's like 27% of snaps. So like, I had stars in my eyes, and I would venture to say when he did that trade, when he sent the second for those two, he probably thought Curtis would be the producer this year and not Quentin Johnson. So it's a good thing for him that like Quentin, because Curtis is like dead. So that's my disappointment because I thought that would be a flex guy for sure, and he's irrelevant.
He runs out
Yeah,
of the backfield sometimes for fun.
Right? Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm just gonna go real quick. I'm just gonna say, like, I mean, they did look a little better this week for fantasy purposes, but I would just say like the Bears he's invested in. I mean, DJ Moore has been okay, but hasn't really had
Fine.
like a pop off week yet. And Caleb Williams did just have a 21 bomb, which was good, but his other 2 weeks he only put up 7. I understand he's a rookie. I understand there's growing pains, but like Carter invested a lot into that team, obviously being like a top tier offense, and maybe they'll get there, but so far they haven't really shown that. So I'm gonna go with them.
All right,
So,
Matt. We probably
Brandon.
gotta hurry up through these because we're running.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we gotta fly. All right, let's just say them in like one or two words each. We're gonna go with Brandon. I'm gonna say for him, his surprise has been he doesn't have. I think probably Stephon Diggs blending in really well, pretty quickly with the offense. But disappointment, I have two actually. I'm gonna say Rashad White, starting to lose that backfield to Bucky Irving, and I'm gonna say Brandon Ayuk, just freaking running cardio out there while every other receiver goes off.
Me, I gotta say, that's a good one too. But I'm gonna say the surprise. It hurts me, but Jaden Daniels, that was a great game yesterday, and he has ripped the heart out of my chest.
Can't even appreciate it.
Disappointments. I think Rashad White's the obvious one there because he's definitely losing that backfield. So those are my picks.
Yeah. I'd go surprise Aaron Jones just for being quite as productive as he's been, swapping teams at his age and injury history. And then I'm going to go with Ayuk just because I feel like after getting the contract finally, you're like, all right, good. They got their guy. They paid him head. He's going to get his thing. And he's just kind of, whether it's missing camp or whatever, he's just kind of rusty out there and not getting the target share you'd expect with all the injuries.
Yeah.
Here,
On
Jake.
to Jake. Where do we want to go?
He hasn't had that many surprises. Like the guys that have been good, we expected.
All right, I got the down guy though. It's Javonte Williams, who apparently is the worst running back in the Denver backfield these days.
Yeah, since
That's
it's
a
Jake, let's
disappointment.
just say his disappointment. We don't need to say his
And Zamir
surprises.
White, also terrible.
Yeah, I'd say I'm gonna use Zamir as my disappointment for my surprise. I mean, it's not a major surprise, but I guess I'll go Kyron. Just the fact that they drafted Corum and Kyron does not seem to have lost any value due to that. So I guess that's a minor surprise. I still thought he'd be good, but I thought it'd be a little bit closer to a split, but it's not any closer. So
No, it's not. I would say surprise. I mean, Derek Carr had a great first 2 weeks, but he came crashing down to earth a little bit. I mean, Jake has a pretty good quarterback in Brock, but that was a surprise.
Well,
Uh,
he does have the number one kicker in fantasy, though. Brandon Aubrey's been a surprise. He's been putting up points, man.
Great call. Yeah,
I'll
that
give him that positive. The only other negative I have to throw out is Christian Watson, real quick, because you didn't know who it was going to be, and he seemed like the big play guy, and he's just non-existent out there.
it's tough with Malik Willis being the quarterback too. And I
Well,
just
even the first week,
disappointment has to be Cooper Cup, man. He was gonna smash this year.
he's dead.
He did. He was like that first week when he had like what 20 something targets, and
Yeah, because Puka went down.
he was gonna be such a beast for Jake this year, and that is a brutal blow. So that's that. We move on to you, Matt.
Yeah, we gotta fly. I'm
Um,
just gonna say my surprise is just my team winning every week at least one game just to freaking begin with. I should be horrible. I don't know why I'm winning. If I had to say a player, I'm probably gonna go with Braylon Allen just for I don't know being good value in the third round and actually starting to find a role on that team. Disappointment? I mean, no one's freaking disappointed. I had no expectations. I guess I'm gonna
well,
go with
Hollywood played one play.
yeah, I guess I'm gonna go with Gus Edwards just because JK has made him look like a 95-year-old dinosaur when you compare the production of the two. It's not even close. So they're running behind the same old line. JK does the same carry Gus does and gets 8 yards versus Gus's one. It's just not even close. So I guess Gus, but
Yeah, I'd say for the negative for you, I think we kind of. I would say Hollywood just because like you thought at least he could be something in that offense, and for him to get hurt as quick as he did was like. I mean, everybody expects him to get hurt, but that quick was crazy. And then I'd say positive for you is Bowers just for being as dominant of a target right away, even though he was a high pick at the tight end position. He usually takes some adjustments.
mhm.
I think my same thoughts as James there. I totally agree with that. Hollywood's a bad blow. You could have maybe gotten trade value on him this year or something if you wanted. But
Yeah.
that hurts his.
Yeah, that hurt a little bit. Moving on to Austin. I'm gonna say Austin's disappointment is Anthony Richardson, just because I mean I think he thought big things of him with obviously that rushing upside to be a really high upside quarterback this year. He is so inaccurate that apparently his running upside does not matter because he can't get a first down. So that's just awful. Surprised. I mean, I think you got to go with Alvin Kamara. I mean, he's looked like a top two, top three back. I mean, the man refuses to age. He refuses to decline. It's insane.
Yeah, I was gonna say for surprise, Rashid Shaheed and those amazing weeks he had, but then he had a goose egg last week. So just the fact
Back
he
to earth.
he looked like a dude for a couple weeks was surprising. And the disappointment for me is Mark Andrews. I mean, I don't know what's going on with his health or what, but he's really looking like he's losing a step and losing that position a little bit.
Yeah, my disappointment would have been Andrews too, and I'd say surprise. I think honestly, David Montgomery just staying as consistent as he is, and not them going more towards Gibbs higher percentage than they had the way it was trending at the end of last year is just being that constant RB2 for his team.
All right, we got to fly. We got 3 minutes. Lucas's. We're cooked. I'm just gonna say Tyreek disappointing. Actually, no, Travis Kelce disappointing.
Travis
He seems
Kelce,
to have lost it. Surprise.
Josh Jacobs.
I guess. Well, not it's mostly just been disappointments. I hate to say it. I guess Jameson Williams. He's looked good this year.
That is a big
The
surprise.
bench.
Yeah.
Jeremy's surprise. Nico being a wide receiver one. I mean, he was good, but this good. Disappointment, I'd say
He's been a beast. I'd offer
quarterback position.
I'd offer Chase Brown as a disappointment there because I definitely thought that committee with him and Zach Moss would be more even, but it's not been close. Like Moss is the guy for sure. So I
That's fair.
thought he had a running back two there, and it doesn't look like he does so far.
Yeah, tough season so far for Jeremy. Let's move on to Mitri real quick. I feel like a surprise has honestly just been, I guess, Jonathan Taylor returning back to the top five, top six RB that he was. I mean, I know he showed like he was improving last year when he came back, but he seems like he hasn't lost a step. That's been good for him. Disappointment's got to be Michael Pittman. I feel like I might have traded him at the right time. That offense cannot support receivers. It's just so bad.
Yeah, I'd
The
say
only guy. Oh, sorry.
sneaky surprise for him is Wandale Robinson. Go Cats. He's getting a lot of targets.
I'd say maybe Judy just being an actual target in that offense a little bit. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, he's been okay. All right.
Chris.
Let's go to Chris.
Mooney.
I mean, Chris has had a disappointing go.
Darnell
Laporta, disappointment.
Yeah.
Disappointment. Mooney is like Kirk's guy, though. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to say Keon Coleman is a surprise. Not that Keon's gone off necessarily. I mean, he only had one target this week, but I was not a Keon guy going into the scouting. I thought he sucked. So the fact that he's actually proving me wrong a little bit, proving that he actually is decent, like I'll take a little bit of defeat there, but Laporte is definitely the disappointment.
Jordan's definitely, I would say Bucky Irving is a nice surprise. Carving
disappointment. Justin Tucker. What happened?
Yeah, Justin Tucker might be washed. I really hate to say it. But yeah, I'd say Justin Tucker probably is his freaking biggest disappointment. But yeah.
Oh boy.
I'd say Olave was a disappointment up until this week.
Yeah. I'm surprised Isaiah Likely. I mean, I know it was kind of mostly week one, and he hasn't done much the other weeks, but if Andrews falls off, someone's got to take that place, and he seems like he's better than Andrews, so that could be something.
Andy, the Red Rifle, we're back.
Disappointment, I guess, probably T just for missing week 1 and 2, and then when he does come back, he doesn't really do anything.
That's fair.
And Tua for having 47 concussions.
Yeah. Hey, we got through that.